You prefer being alone to engaging in meaningless conversations. You often overthink issues that others have long forgotten. You frequently doubt yourself, even when everyone around you thinks you're doing very well. And sometimes, you feel like you don't really belong anywhere, as if you're seeing the world a little differently than the people around you. If one or more of those things sound like you, it might not be a weakness, nor does it mean you're too sensitive or too different. Interestingly, psychologists have discovered that many traits that society often considers strange actually appear very frequently in people with high IQs. And what's even more surprising, the people with the highest IQs are often not the most confident, not the most talkative, and not the most outstanding in a crowd either. In the next few minutes, we'll explore the 5 most common distinguishing traits of people with high IQs. Check how many of these 5 characteristics you possess, because the last one might explain a feeling you've carried for years but never quite put your finger on. The first difference is perhaps the most easily misunderstood. People with high IQs tend to spend more time alone than most people, but that doesn't mean they're lonely. Upon hearing this, many people immediately think of isolation. But in reality, loneliness and being alone are 2 completely different things. Loneliness is when you want to connect, but there's no one around. Being alone, on the other hand, is a choice. A study by the London School of Economics once found something quite interesting. High-intelligence individuals tend to receive less emotional benefit from frequent social interaction compared to the average person. To put it simply, the average person energizes themselves from crowds. Meanwhile, people with high IQs often recharge their energy from silence. For them, silence is like a charging station for their brains. That's why many smart people don't like conversations that last for hours but go nowhere. It's not because they're arrogant. It's not because they hate people, but because their brains are always looking for depth. Albert Einstein is a famous example. He often walked alone for hours on end, and many world-changing ideas emerged during those seemingly idle periods. Interestingly, when alone, the brain doesn't rest. It's connecting. It's analyzing. It's searching for connections we've never seen before. And this is something anyone can learn. You don't have to be a genius. Try spending 30 minutes a day without your phone. No social networks. No noise. Just you and your thoughts. I'm curious to know, what helps you restore your energy better? Being alone or stay with people? Please leave a comment below. The second difference is something many intelligent people have to live with every day. Their brains almost never actually shut down. Have you ever been lying in bed in the middle of the night? Everything is quiet, but your mind is still replaying a conversation you had hours ago or a decision yet to be made. An unexpected idea emerges. Then it develops into dozens of other ideas. Many people with high IQs describe their minds as like a browser with dozens of tabs open at the same time. Each tab is a problem, an idea, a hypothesis, a possibility. Neuroscientists have discovered that high intelligence is often accompanied by strong connections between different brain regions. That's why they often see connections that others miss. A small event can give them a big idea. A simple sentence can keep them thinking for days. Nikola Tesla is the most famous example. He could visualize the entire invention in his head before actually building it in real life. That ability sparks extraordinary creativity, but it also has a downside. When the brain is always active, rest becomes more difficult. Many intelligent people have trouble sleeping, or overthinking, or constantly analyzing every situation. If you are that kind of person, don't try to force your brain to be completely silent. Instead, write down the ideas that come to you. Many books, many businesses, and many great inventions have started that way. So, let's be honest. Have you ever stayed up late just because your mind wouldn't stop thinking? If so, you're not alone. The third difference sounds paradoxical. People with high IQs aren't usually the ones who always insist they're right. On the contrary, they're quite comfortable saying something many people are hesitant to say. I don't know. It sounds simple, but in reality, admitting you don't know is one of the hardest things for the human ego. A lot of people like to give answers, even if they're not really sure. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with little knowledge tend to overestimate their own abilities, while those with deep knowledge are well aware of what they don't know. The more you learn, the more you realize the world is more complicated than you thought. And the more I realize there are still many things to discover. Physicist Richard Feynman once said that he could live with uncertainty. You don't need to know all the answers right away. That's the difference between seeking the truth and trying to prove yourself right. If you want to apply this to life, next time you argue with someone, try asking yourself, am I missing something? Sometimes a good question is much more valuable than a hasty answer. So, let's be honest. Do you easily change your opinion when new evidence becomes available? Or do you often defend your point of view to the end? Fourth difference. People with high IQs are usually not the first to speak in a conversation. They tend to observe first. This causes them to sometimes be misunderstood. Others think they are shy, little understanding, or there's nothing to say. But the reality is quite the opposite. While people are talking, they are collecting data. They notice who is leading the conversation, who is agreeing just because of pressure, who is hiding their true feelings. Studies on social intelligence show that people who are good at recognizing social cues tend to spend more time observing before responding. That's why they often see things that others miss. It's not because they're smarter about everything, but because they collect more information before concluding. Warren Buffett used to spend a great deal of his time reading and thinking. He is famous for saying, "Sit still and think." In a world where everyone wants to speak up quickly, the ability to observe before reacting becomes a huge advantage. You can try this today, in the next meeting, or in the next conversation. Take a few minutes just to observe. Do you think you're more of a talker or more of an observer? Leave a comment below. The final difference is perhaps the most surprising. People with high IQs tend to doubt themselves more than others realize. It sounds paradoxical, because we often think that intelligent people are very confident, but the reality is different. The more you know, the more you realize how much you still don't know. Psychologists call this the other side of the Dunning-Kruger effect. People who know little are often very certain. People who understand deeply often see complexity. That's why many intelligent people often ask themselves, am I right? Am I missing something? Is there another perspective I haven't seen? Charles Darwin had a very special habit. Every time I find evidence against my own hypothesis, he immediately wrote it down, because he was most afraid of self-deception. But if you're not careful, intellectual humility can sometimes turn into excessive self-doubt, and that's what you need to avoid. Remember this, a little self-doubt helps us learn, but doubting everything about ourselves prevents us from ever acting. Interestingly, all 5 characteristics we just discussed are easily misunderstood. People who prefer solitude are perceived as unsociable. People who overthink are perceived as anxious. People who often say, "I don't know," are perceived as lacking confidence. People who observe a lot are perceived as passive. People who doubt themselves are perceived as weak. But sometimes, things that are considered weaknesses, again, it's a consequence of a brain processing the world differently. Of course, possessing some of these traits doesn't necessarily mean you have a high IQ. But if you recognize yourself in many of those points, perhaps you understand yourself a little better after watching this video. And now I'm very curious. Of those 5 differences, which one are you most similar to? Please leave a number from 1 to 5 inches the comments. I read almost all the comments. If this video helped you understand how your brain works better, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because in the next videos, we will continue to explore the most fascinating secrets of psychology, intelligence, and personal development.